Is Microsoft Unified Support busting your IT budget? Well, you're not alone. US Cloud is the global leader in third-party Microsoft enterprise support, and they're helping enterprises slash cost by 30 to 50% versus Microsoft Unified, all while getting faster response times from domestic engineers. No offshoring, no long waits, just expert support you can count on 24/7, 365. Trusted by 50 of the Fortune 500 companies and offering senior-level engineers with an average of 14 years experience with Microsoft technologies, US Cloud is a smarter alternative for premium Microsoft support without the premium price. Ready to make the switch? Book a call at uscloud.com to get started today. That's uscloud.com.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I am joined, as always, for our Cloud and AI News of the Month by Aaron Delp, and from Software Defined Talk, the great Brandon Whichard's with us. Guys, how you been?
Fantastic.
Good.
I think we need to introduce Brandon's internet situation.
No.
The lanes we had to go through to make
complaining
this
about the internet. That's what all podcasts do. We'll move on to like fun topics, you know?
Yeah. I mean, in the bigger, honestly, in the bigger picture of things, this is actually sort of the third take. Brandon and I tried to do this the other day. My internet was down. He had a little bit down, but we soldier on. We move forward. Guys, actually, you know, we're recording this about a week after the NFL draft. Aaron, do you remember when we did the cloud draft on our show maybe a decade or so ago? I'm wondering if we need to bring the AI draft along, you know, kind of, it's that time of year. Brandon, you probably don't even remember this. We had like 3 or 4 folks on the show and we went round robin style about, 6 rounds or so, picking
like Colin McNamara and
Nick Weaver was on. We picked like 6 things. Everybody got 6 things from the cloud that you could pick. We should go back and I'll put that link in the show notes.
No, I love it. I think I may have missed this episode. Yeah. I'm going to go put it back. I'm going to grade you like Mel Kiper. I'm going to get upset. I can't believe they didn't take Google. Look at this, Look at these idiots. Brian Gracely and Aaron Delp. They don't know anything about the cloud.
It had to be. I mean, it had to be 10 years ago, right?
Oh, at least.
Oh, wow. That's got to have some dated hot takes in there for you guys.
There's going to be probably at least half of those are definitely out of the league at this point.
I think we did 2 of them, didn't we? Or did we only do it
We
one?
might have. We'll have to look. We'll go back in the Wayback Machine. If we had a Cloudcast GPT, we could easily find it, but we don't. Maybe someday we will. Well, let's start with. I mean, this show is jam packed. I don't know if we're going to have enough time to get through all of it because we're starting a little late. Let's start with earnings. Let's start with cloud earnings because we had a little drama. Google everybody just announced. AWS just announced 3rd quarter in a row they missed their earnings number. Now, I don't want to say they're not doing well. Still up 17%, $118 billion run rate. But 3rd quarter in a row, are we on? I got to ask, are we on Matt Garman watch at this point?
Well, in the spirit of the NFL draft, I think he gets at least, this is still his rookie season. We got to give him like one more year. Although I will say, I mean, it is surprising, I'm sure we'll talk about Azure and Google here. And, Amazon is famously metrics driven and, they're high accountability. And it's not that it's like you said at the beginning, this is still a great team. If, continuing the NFL metaphor, obviously great. They've done, many past championships, but it is surprising. It's surprising to see them, miss, even if they, guided, and I know they've guided a little lower going forward. So maybe they'll adjust it, but, it's notable, right? I think 3 times is definitely a trend.
Yeah. Well, and when we put it in contrast, so Azure announced up 35%. Now, again, we're never totally sure how they count it, but they seem to be very close to Microsoft's number or to AWS's numbers. If you use their accounting, it's about 126 billion. Google up 28%, up to $45 billion run rate. I am sort of curious. I'm wondering if, given the fact that both Microsoft and Google are now bundling AI along with their productivity stuff. And so, everybody's using those one way, shape or the other. Is that sort of account for this? Is AWS's lack of a, kind of stable cash cow productivity tool or some application that everybody has that they can embed AI into? Is that potentially why they're missing? Is it something else, or is it just, a little bit of people shifting where they're doing stuff? I feel like that has a little bit to do with what's going on.
I don't know. I do think, every time we always have to caveat these numbers, like Microsoft includes like various other services, AWS doesn't, and Google Cloud. So and it even says here, in a friend of the show, I think, right, friend of everyone's show, Jamin Ball, right? He nicely kind of calls it out. It says includes G Suite. And I know G Suite had a big price increase over the last year. So I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll say they're winning the finance game better, right? Because I mean, there's some mystifying about the numbers. I think AWS is still the pure cloud number, but Azure for sure. Like, I mean, I think again, back to the thing before, what your take, Aaron, like, 3 times is a trend. They do seem to be moving up. Like, what do you think?
No, I agree. And we've talked about it on the podcast before, that I really feel like Azure is positioned long-term to eventually take over. I think that was actually a prediction once upon a time on this show. And I completely agree with Brian of maybe it's financially, like if you actually like, hey, what does AI bring to the table? Like the actual numbers may not be that great, but the actual momentum of the services, like both Azure and GCP, they have the momentum of having AI services built in, and maybe that becomes a magnet. And over time, everyone starts to gravitate to them. And are we officially calling AWS old at some point, right? Well, like they're like, they're old and stodgy. They don't have the AI stuff.
Well, I don't know if we're calling them old, but I would be really curious if the AI stuff, not so much, are using everything, but the fact that it's now sort of built into, again, these things that are just in every business, are we potentially seeing, people going, well, maybe I should shift a little bit more over there. I mean, it's a commodity service, it's compute, it's network, it's whatever. Are we seeing that drag along sort of happen as we go along? But yeah, no, I think that's, we had sort of stopped talking about cloud earnings, and it does feel like it's, it's starting to become something we ought to keep an eye on a little bit more. So, guys, tariffs are back on. They may be back off midway
today,
through the show.
By the time we publish it might be off.
Yeah. So at any point in time, we cannot be held accountable for what's going on with tariffs. Although they did seem to hit Apple and Meta's, or not Meta's earnings, Amazon's earnings. So that'll be sort of interesting to watch. Not Apple as much, but Amazon's for sure. Andy Jassy sent out his letter to shareholders. It felt like it was just basically an AWS letter to shareholders. I mean, 90% of it was AWS. I feel like Andy isn't that interested in the rest of the business, which, granted, he ran it for a long time. Do you think if you're a shareholder, you're a little concerned about that? They do quite a bit of business in other stuff, whether it's logistics or ads or other stuff. Is it just the classic, like, that's what I know, that's what I feel comfortable with? Or, do you think that, this is a transition for Amazon?
I just think maybe it's like, you talk about the thing that probably you both know about, but also the thing that's maybe tells the best story. Like, I don't know if Amazon retail, I mean, they're so dominant, and there isn't necessarily, like, everybody knows the story, right? Like, if you want something, you order it on Amazon. If it's not perishable, get it on Amazon. If not, go to the grocery store.
Right.
So I think it's maybe just the narrative. It's like, well, what other story can you tell other than that? Now, I think to your point about the tariffs and stuff, I think if anything, it's going to be a negative drag, right? Because obviously anyone that's dealing with retail and anything that's coming from overseas, right? I mean, that can't help. Can't not affect earnings. So maybe he has to talk about it more. So I don't know. I think he's probably like all CEO. He's just he's kind of, if you will, finding the best story. And that AWS seems to be the best story. What do you think, Aaron?
No, I was going to say, because also, like, just kind of like the previous one we were talking about with the earnings, it's like, well, there's the story of what it actually is, and then there's the story of the financials. I'd also love to know, because, I think this letter tends to be a personal letter, and historically has been, but I also know, like, we've all kind of worked in big corporate comms. Does he really write the letter? Like, how much of that is actually him, and how much of that is like the team, and how many people got together to write this letter kind of thing? Or did he just like crank it out on a plane sometime? Like, I would love to know, like, what's the origin of the letter? Because I agree with Brian of like if it's just him, you kind of go to what you know a lot of times. But also, too, maybe the comms team was like, well, we can't really talk about that other stuff because there's really no story here. Or it's like, it's pretty boring, or it's a bad story, right? And then, talking about AWS just sucks the least at this point. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say the best part of the letter wasn't actually the letter. I enjoyed Corey Quinn's annotated version of the letter, which I think, I don't know, maybe Brian will put that in show notes, where he basically goes through line by line and offers a critique on many of the things, which I always feel like some of it's funny, some of it's tongue in cheek, but some of it is like spot on. I think some of his observations, which makes it just so good. So, I mean, not only am I interested in, to your point, Aaron, did he write the letter? I want to know if he read this, if he read the annotated version. I mean, it seems like it would have to make its way to his inbox one way or the other. So I don't know whether or not he did, but there's some, there's definitely some pointed feedback, if we will, constructive criticism from Corey. So that's a fun read if you're looking for something else to check out.
Yeah. Well, and one other thing that was in there for those of you that enjoy kind of following culture stuff or, want to make fun of culture stuff, Andy seems to introduce this concept of Amazon is a company that asks why a lot. So he's now calling them a why culture, a WHY culture. So, and then he tries to call it like WQ or something like that. Like I think he's trying to put his stamp on the
YQ,
16 or
YQ.
23.
That was that was quite the funny. Oh, that's right.
IQ. Now they're
IQ is,
YQ.
Let's call it YQ. And you felt like that did, to Aaron's point, that did not feel like an Andy Jassy line. That didn't feel like something he came up with. But, nonetheless, check it out.
Yeah. I don't know if that gets counted as like the 17th or 18th Amazon way, or if this is just a completely new, like those are too many. He just wants to get it down to, you should just be able to ask why about everything. I feel like that's something like if you're a parent of like young kids, though, you're like, please just stop asking why, just because I said so. Right. Like I don't know. It's an interesting twist. Okay. Lots of other stuff in the cloud space and the enterprise space. Everybody who's big is being investigated as being a monopoly. People can read about that sort of stuff. I did find it interesting that both the Intel new CEO and AMD they have new focus, and the focus is basically go faster, be NVIDIA, in different ways. AMD sort of said, hey, we think we're close to catching up. The Intel CEO is just basically like, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for a while. He's like, we're going to cut people. We're going to cut back on things, and you all need to come back in the office. And I'm like, boy, that's the direction where you're just like, all right, we're just going to start with the basics. We're going to stop eating badly. We're going to get out and walk every morning. He feels like he's like, what in the heck did I take over? Which is kind of odd for somebody who was on the board previously, but this feels like the undoing of Pat Gelsinger, which,
it does.
I think we endorse.
I was going to say, though, like it feels, I mean, the thing that's so strange about this, and maybe we came up on the last show, is just like they didn't really change the strategy. Right. Like that to me is like the fact that, I mean, it does feel like we're just going to beat this NFL metaphor into the ground this show. It's just like you hired you fired the old coach, you hired the assistant coach, and you're doing everything exactly the same. And it's just like, well, all the problems were the old coach. It's like, I mean, maybe the old coach, I'm sure Gelsinger had his issues. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's a perfect person, but like, it's like, I feel like you got to do more than just be like, we're going to, just what you said, eat our vegetables, train harder. It's like all the cliches. We're going to work harder. We're going to work harder than everyone. We're going to run faster. It's like, I don't think this is going to get you there. So it feels like Intel's just in a long period of denial here. I don't know, Aaron, what do you think?
No. Well, my take on it all was like, well, is go faster a new direction? Because at the end of the day, it's just like, hey, just go faster, even if it's the exact same way, right? Like, I didn't feel like anything was, to your point, like it wasn't super new direction. It was just like, go back to basics, go faster. Like, I don't know. That doesn't seem like a new direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question just asked, like, okay, why are we suddenly a better foundry now? Because we're going faster. Why are we suddenly smarter at building GPUs? Did something happen overnight? Like, if we just like come in the office and like, I don't know, do we do matrix math like better? Like, what's going on? Like, so I don't know. I mean, that one seems like really dire, but I say that, next year it'll be up like 500%. So don't take my advice, but it's weird.
Yeah. Let's jump over to the AI stuff, and I'm going to start with Brandon. What has become sort of your favorite topic in this, coding assistants. So there was really kind of three things I saw. So apparently OpenAI is in talks to potentially buy, I guess we'd call it sort of second place Windsurf for $3 billion. So that helps us put some sort of valuation around Cursor, which apparently had like a $10 billion valuation. Yep, I think that's what we saw last time. Apparently Google is now launching and going to build their own version of one of these code assistants, as well as Azure also announced this. I'm trying to understand this because we've talked about this before, right? Like this doesn't feel like a market that in and of itself, if we think about this as a tool, is worth that much, right? Because at some point somebody has to buy one of these, $3, $4, $5 billion. But I'm trying to figure out what the bigger picture that people are sort of thinking about. Are they thinking, because every time you talk to developers and they look at these things, yes, they either love them or hate them, doesn't matter. But they also are like, look, man, I only spend 10% of my time, 15% of my time coding. So that the uptick for that doesn't feel like it's that huge. But like, do you think they're really targeting this at coders, or do you think they're doing the math and they're targeting this at like the non-coders who just have ideas and they're just going to be able to put the idea into the thing and it's just going to tell them, like, this feels like it's totally tied to developers, which historically have never spent any money, and, making them 10, 15% better. I mean, is this like, do they have to become 100x? And like, I'm just trying to understand what the bigger picture of this is, because the numbers don't necessarily make sense.
Well, I think I would kind of go at it a different way at this point, because I've had a lot of the same thoughts. But I think like, we almost going to go back in time a little bit here and be like, okay, OpenAI announces ChatGPT. They're thinking like maybe they'll get 50 or 100,000 users, if they're lucky. And it goes on to just spawn like the next major consumer application. I think it's somewhere on the order of like 800 million people, whatever, use it. So I think at this point, and their valuation has gone to like, I don't even know what it is, however, $1 trillion, right? So part of it, I think, is they're sort of like, you know what, we're in, the eye of the storm here. We've achieved incredible product market fit. So let's just buy anything that's related, right? Because it's like, if you get $3 billion of stock in OpenAI, and OpenAI is like, well, we're worth 500 billion. It's like, it's just all kind of fake money at this point, right? And you're like, so if you're Windsurf, you're like, would I trade 3 quote unquote whatever? Do I want a bucket of OpenAI shares, or do I want a bucket of our shares? And so I think they're just like, we'll take that bucket. And I do think, I have for a long time too. It does feel like it's going to be a commodity, but like, I personally find myself returning to ChatGPT over and over. I try them all, but then I just go back to ChatGPT. It's like, it's the place I have a bunch of stuff in there. And I do think if they say to themselves, we're going to build the biggest consumer application. And I think they are kind of creating a little bit of a bundle. It's like, don't really want to pay the $20 for ChatGPT just for the chat app. But then it's like, okay, could I have the coding app? Is that in the bundle? Okay, maybe I would do that. Could I have more access to like talking to it? Maybe that's good. So I think it's sort of like, if they get enough stuff in there, kind of like, they don't necessarily like this analogy, but like, hey, just become some Microsoft 365 subscription. Like, I don't use like all the stuff in 365. I don't even know all the stuff I have, right? But it's just like, at some point you just kind of get it. So for OpenAI specifically, I think that's what they're doing. And I think, like, if you're Cursor here, though, you got to be like super worried, because I believe this history is OpenAI helped invest in Cursor, right? But it's sort of like, there's not really a second place. You know what I mean? There's nobody else doing something as big as OpenAI. Maybe somebody else like Amazon buys them, but it won't be the same. So I think it's fascinating. And maybe just to summarize the whole thing, it's sort of like they're building, I think, a big consumer application that will probably involve the subscription and advertising. And they probably just think, oh, this is another little checkbox in the subscription thing, like Apple One. So that's my take. What do you think, Aaron?
No, I actually was going to go the Apple One direction, and then you mentioned it at the end, but I'll also throw in another analogy. It reminds me of Zuckerberg back in the day when it was like Facebook, and then he bought Instagram, and then he bought WhatsApp, and it was just this consolidation of any social media platform that had users. Like, I can't risk anyone breaking out, and also consolidating that all under one big ecosystem for ads and all those other things. And so I 1000% agree. I just think it's like, as folks kind of raise up in the radar, OpenAI is just going to make sure, they consume them.
Yeah, I think, especially Brandon, I think you make an important point. Like, this is sort of dealing with funny money at this point in terms of valuation. So it's almost like free or fake money. I think it does feel like they are looking for, they being kind of all these companies, they're all looking for like, what is the easy, fast on ramp for people to start using AI? Because they do have the challenge of like, I got to start monetizing these GPUs, which are, churning like crazy. So yeah, this sort of makes sense. Aaron, I want to take one break for a second in case the Windsurf folks are listening to the show. Would you like to do a historical minute on what do you do if you get a $3 billion valuation offer for your small company, i.e., let's call this Solomon Hike's corner. Would you like to tell them what to do here?
No, it's oh gosh.
Because if somewhere on your calendar you have a meeting that says we could get to 10, let's talk about that meeting.
No, exactly. I mean, we've talked about this many times over and over. It's like, guys, I mean, when you get the 3 billion offer and a lot of those founders are like, hey, no, 3 billion is not enough. We're bigger than that. It's like, come on, guys. Like you said, it's all funny money. You take that money.
All right. Well, listen, I agree, but just
you turn it into real money and you run.
The devil's advocate position here would be like, I think if it's 3 billion for like Google or Microsoft, it take no meetings. It's over, right? But you are kind of tying yourself to OpenAI, right? And OpenAI has a history of doing weird things. They are technically still a nonprofit, right? And Sam Altman, I would say, not always the greatest working relationships. I don't think that's controversial. So you are kind of like what you're really saying is like we're trading our lottery tickets, our lotto tickets for the big jackpot ticket. But you have to go into that. If you take the deal, you're like, this could go bad in so many ways. Sam Altman it could be a Thanksgiving. We could all just be eating turkey and he could be fired, or like anything could possibly happen at that moment. So it's probably still worth it, but like you need to know going into this, right? It's sort of like this could go really crazy.
Yeah, I think the bottom line, having now watched thousands of acquisitions, is the general guidance, and this is not official financial advice from the the Cloudcast, but number one, take the money, especially as one has a B on the end of it, and number two, the company won't be the same after you get acquired by whoever the heck it is. You will not change the world with them. Most likely, you will not get to be in charge anymore. 100% that chance of that. So it doesn't really matter who buys you. I mean, you might decide, hey, we'd like to live in Seattle versus living in Sunnyvale or whatever. That's up to you. But when the number has
no matter what anyone says about the cultures will change.
Let me reintroduce this concept to folks. If the number has a B on the end of it, that becomes fuck you money, and then you get to say fuck you to whatever the heck you want to do at that point. If it has an M on the end, it's a little different. But that's our just general official take on these sort of things.
You should call that the B philosophy. I like it.
That's right.
The B philosophy.
That's right. A couple of other things. It does feel like memory is that there are two new hotnesses right now. One of them is MCP, Model Context Protocol at the techie level, and then memory. Microsoft and ChatGPT both adding memory. Any takes on either MCP or memory being added to these things? They both feel like very, very good things. Memory you don't really have to worry about because it's just there. MCP feels like kind of a very interesting thing, but also like, is this just a new, middleware type of thing? So thoughts on either one of those, memory or MCP?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on. I think MCP, very promising technology, but I think it is just a behind the scenes thing. And I guess they'll have to fight it out with Google's agent to agent protocol. So we'll see what happens there. It's just too I think for normal people, it's too complicated, but the fact that the technical people can kind of, if you will, integrate into their AIs via one of those standards, that's a good thing. But I don't think, again, it's mostly a technology discussion, and at least my take. And then the memory thing is like, it's kind of like everything. It's like, well, let's try it. You know what I mean? I think Meta AI had launched their whole thing, and my son has the Google or the Meta glasses. So we've got him trying it out. And it's like, I kind of like it. I mean, the more that I do find that, like, kind of back to like always going back to ChatGPT, it's like, I don't know if it's so much memory as it's sort of like all my chat history is there for like long running ones. And I like the fact that I don't have to like go back and explain everything. So I think it's generally like a cool idea. And I do think it's sort of the, for so long we've been talking about privacy is really important, and Apple's made like their whole strategy around that. But maybe in the end, we'd actually, if it's like, we only want privacy unless your memory is really good and you can do other things for me. So I think maybe we're going to find out just how important privacy is to everyone as these things learn more about us. What do you think, Aaron?
No, I think I hadn't even thought about that concept with memory, but I'm just like, oh wow, yeah, that's a really, really good idea. This whole concept of privacy over time now becomes even bigger of an issue. Gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. That's pretty amazing. But yeah, MCP though, I will say fundamental thing, advances the standards. I think it's going to be good for the industry. And oh, by the way, most people out there aren't going to really care about it, or it's too deep in the weeds for most folks out there. Yeah. But the folks that live it day in, day out, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's the MCP promising. Stuff is interesting. I'll see if I can find some more. I mean, there are, just thousands of these things popping. These little MCP servers that sort of, it seems like a bad name for it because it doesn't. It's just basically like a way of exposing the functionality of your whatever your service is, through an API. But Ben Thompson, for those of you that listen, had a really good kind of thing about Apple and privacy that Brandon was bringing up, and his was all in the context of, it feels like right now, both between him and John Gruber, they've been talking a lot about, it feels like Apple's kind of missing the boat on AI. They're feeling a little long in the tooth, and his thing was basically they have banked themselves for so long now on being kind of the steward of privacy, whether it's protecting your keys or protecting your your data or whatever it is, and he's like. And they're doing it what now feels like it's sort of the detriment of adding new capabilities through AI. And he's like, it was basically just kind of getting into this idea that like sometimes the dogma that you base the company on, and you're not willing to sort of make changes to it when the technology around it shifts really fast or like in significant ways. And his take around Apple was just like it doesn't feel like they're rethinking about sort of security and privacy in the context of like, yeah, but if AI does these really cool things, do I need all that stuff? So it was sort of interesting. I think it was on one of his offshoot podcasts called Sharp Tech. But if you listen to any of the Ben Thompson ones, he's been talking about that a lot lately. Let's see, what else is going on? We've hit a lot of these things. NVIDIA, for those of you that follow the stock market, had to take about a $5 billion write-off due to some of the tariffs. So one of the first tariff-related things that we're seeing, although apparently their numbers are way up now that some of the other companies are reporting that AI is driving their revenue. So don't take that for any any investment advice. But NVIDIA feels like they're getting a little bit of a whipsaw between growth of using the technology and the other stuff. Anything else on the list, guys? I think we could cover a lot of things. What else sort of jumped out at you interesting from the last month or so?
I think the only thing I was going to mention, you mentioned on Apple, was just simply they did make a judge very angry, and it sounds like somebody could go to jail at Apple, which you rarely see these things actually spill out into. You rarely see a judge, like the legal system work so slowly, be extremely upset to the point I think we could say she's pissed, and actually refer an employee of Apple, I think the VP of finance, to I don't know, I guess some type of criminal perjury kind of thing. So that'll probably be a topic for next show. But I just thought to myself, wow, never seen that on the annual review. Would that be a good thing or a bad thing? Took one for the team, going to jail for Apple. Is that the highest rating, or is it the lowest rating? You're like, you didn't do the right thing. We have to get rid of you. If you call too much attention to yourself. So I'm anxious to watch. Maybe we'll have a Law and Order Apple edition next month.
Yeah, I was listening to something. Yeah, they basically the judge had said, hey, look, you can't. It had to do with their app store and being able to take external purchases, and they were like, you can't prevent people from doing it, and you can't take 30%. And basically, they were like, okay, you can still do it, but we're taking 27%. And so, it seemed like it was very much just a, flipping the bird to the judge's thing, and kind of being, very, kind of trolly, if you will. But yeah, that'll be sort of interesting. It is interesting to watch, for what was supposed to be a much more sort of business friendly administration. It does feel like a lot of these big companies they're dragging through the the DOJ antitrust stuff in the U.S., which is sort of unusual, but we'll see how it shakes out. All right, guys. Well, listen, we covered a lot of stuff. There are a lot more things in the show notes for those of you that want to follow along, whether it's antitrust or other types of things that might come out of it. We didn't even touch on, Google potentially having to start spinning out some stuff. If they did have to spin out some stuff. So Google, just to put it in context, Google once again got ruled a monopoly. I'm not sure how many times they get to be ruled a monopoly by different things, but they're, starting to talk about spinning out stuff. Chrome is one of those ones. Do you have another favorite Google thing you'd like to see spun out for any reason?
That's actually a good question. I guess Gmail would be the one that I'm always like worried about, like, because they announced the end support for Nest, which is sort of that's bad for me. I didn't think about end of lifing my thermostats at my house, so I'm like, I have to figure that out. But I do think Gmail is always the one I was like, if they took down Gmail, it would be very painful for me. I think I've registered a Gmail account at like 4 billion different websites, so that's the one that's. But that's probably not so much I don't know if that's a monopoly at this point, but that's the only one else I can think of as being high value. I don't know, Aaron, what do you think? You got any favorite?
Yeah, I was going to say, so I mean, it's funny because everyone's talking about who's going to buy Chrome, and it is kind of funny because pretty much all the AI companies like Perplexity and gosh, I can't even remember all the different ones that have expressed interest. OpenAI, like, because everyone was like, oh yeah, I want a browser. Like, if I'm an AI company and I want a browser, that would be amazing. So I mean, it's just this natural, like, Chrome would be the golden jewel, if you will. But to your point about Gmail, like, it is interesting to me because I think there's a lot of folks that have personal domains that way back when, I mean, years and years ago, you could go get a domain and then Gmail would be free for the longest time. And then they started monetizing it. And now they've been cranking that up over time. But at the same time, there's still not a super great alternative to all of that. So it's like so sticky. I mean, because like you're saying, it's your freaking email, right? Like it's so sticky and so hard to move that somewhere else. And so there might be a nice little money grab for somebody there just solely because, I mean, how do you leave it? Right. Yeah.
Would that be like the equivalent to buying the modems from AOL? Just, at this point in time, right. Like, we don't even think about it, but somebody still runs those things.
That's right.
That'd be interesting. Well, all right, boys, listen, April's been an interesting month. May's up ahead of us. Possibility they will have a new pope in May, so we'll keep an eye on that. It doesn't have much to do with technology, but something to keep an eye on. Anyways, we will see you guys. Thank you all for listening. We will see you guys in a month. And for the rest of you, we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.